Hello, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to look at a game from round six of the Norway chess tournament between Wesley So with the white pieces and Magnus Carlsen with the black pieces. Now, going into round six, Magnus Carlsen was in the lead, um, dominating the tournament. And so let's see what happened if Wesley So could derail the march of King Magnus. So we see traditional Queen's Gambit, Slav defense, and the exchange Slav. Now, it seems very drawish, and and for a long time it was thought that the exchange Slav was, really basically a handshake offer. But when you really research this opening, you will find that it is very, very dangerous. There are a lot of pitfalls for black in this variation. And mostly what white tries to do is to entangle and dominate black's queen side. And basically, white is using that extra tempo in order to start his attack early on the black queen side, and black is usually stuck defending for a long time. And we'll see how this game progressed. For those of you that are interested in researching this opening in more detail, of course, check my links below as always. But I did make another video called Grandmasters versus the Slav Exchange. And that video is about an hour and change, and I just go over nothing but Grandmaster top level games in the Exchange Slav defense. And it's very interesting if you have the patience and you're really thirsty to find out more about this variation. So Bishop F4, uh, good move. Knight C3 can also be played. A lot of players I noticed too that play London system will often transpose to a similar type of setup, but by playing, this Slav variation. And then after the exchange of pawns, then they'll bring the bishop out to f4. So just normal development. And it looks like there's nothing going on. Again, even at this point, black has to be careful. Bishop f5 is playable, but um, black then has to be mindful of attacks at some point, on this pawn right here. And then sometimes it can get quite awkward in trying to defend this pawn. Right here, for instance, knight a5 to keep from creating any weakness here. Queen a4 check, and then usually you'll get bishop d7, queen c2, and then e6, and then the bishop is locked behind the fence anyway. Of course, the queen can't move because then this knight would be a left on prise. Then knight c6. This is better position for white because black is simply just entering into this pin here, and say after e3, a6, and knight e5 is on the menu here. And then if instead of a6, if black just tries to get this dark square bishop out with e6, bishop b5, threatening to win a pawn is annoying. And rook c8 falls to queen takes a7. So the point of those variations is just to illustrate white's ideas in, again, tying up black on the queen side and creating weaknesses. So that's why in a lot of variations you do not see this black bishop just come right out to f5. Black can play it, but can run into problems often. So you see different moves here, like for instance a6, already with the idea of hindering any attempt by white on the queen side to post the bishop on b5 or play moves like queen a4, what have you. Rook c1, and now the bishop comes out. Notice with this prophylactic move guarding the b5 square in the right time, b5 can be played, so queen a4 is rendered ineffective and useless here. So now the bishop comes to f5, but of course it costs time. So e3, rook c8 from Magnus, bishop e2, of course avoiding exchange of pieces, e6, castles, and again the position is symmetrical in nature. It looks very harmless, but again there's a lot of turbulence right beneath the surface in these type of positions. Knight d7. So now we have the maneuvering process here. Sometimes black will try to dominate this square. Excuse me, this c4 square, and also provoke weakness down the c file that he can exploit. Knight a4, and white is pursuing likewise strategy. Again, trying to attack these squares and provoke weakness. And again, with the symmetrical nature of the position, it often benefits white because he has that advantage, advantage in being able to move first, and he can always keep one step ahead of black, and black is usually kept on the defensive. Bishop e7, h3, castles, a3, and there we go. Knight a5, knight c5, and so you see Magnus pursuing the same strategy. b5, protecting the b2 pawn, of course, supporting the knight. The knight is exchanged as he was threatening to take here. And now d takes c5. So now we kind of see our first imbalance here of the game, and we see that Wesley has this 3-2 majority on the queen side, and black now has a pawn preponderance in the center of the board. So of course, if he can somehow get some more control over these dark squares in the center and be able to advance these pawns, his position could become better. All right. Knight takes a3, sacrificing the pawn as Wesley. Knight d4, bishop e4, and now f3, bishop g6 by Magnus, queen b3 harassing the knight, which is misplaced, knight c4, and now bishop takes c4, d takes c4, and so you can see Wesley just gets the pawn right back. Again, you have this symmetrical position, but it's very dangerous for black because the problem is that white now has the space advantage, okay, and his increasing board control will prove to be very dangerous in this position. And if you just start comparing the pieces, you'll see that all of white's pieces are just a little bit better than black's. So it's not a huge advantage, but it's enough of an advantage. Queen e8. Bishop drops back to g3. And now e5. And one of the ideas here is if bishop takes e5, then you have this bishop takes c5. So this is why Wesley just moves a knight. So for instance, bishop takes e5, bishop takes c5, b takes, and now queen takes, recovering the piece. I think this is still good for white here. Wesley decided to move the knight back to b3. Magnus protects the pawn. Queen d5. And now queen b5 from Magnus. Magnus decides to give up this powerful pawn. And now bishop e7 is played. The problem is, if queen takes b4 here, then white can have a dominating position after the move bishop takes d6, attacking this rook. And for example, if rook e8, then there's serious problems with this discovery after c6. And since the queen has to move, white is now winning the game after c takes b7. So this is a problem right here with this whole idea from Magnus. So we can say right now that queen to b5 was a mistake, and perhaps Carlsen should have opted for the move like bishop g5 here with the attack here, or perhaps bishop f6 and giving up this pawn perhaps, and having a little activity is compensation. So instead, Magnus played queen b5. Wesley took the pawn. Bishop e7. So now Magnus is down a pawn here. And without compensation, usually if you're down material, you want to have some type of overriding factor to make up for the deficit. And here, Magnus doesn't really have anything. He's not, doesn't have any piece activity or dynamic play or an attack going in the position. He's just down a pawn, and white also has more space. So rook f d8. Bishop goes to d6. Magnus wants to hold on to the bishop here. h6. Knight d4. So long to the bishop here. And now rook e8 is played. And now rook fe1. And now, again, like I said, white is just simply up a pawn. And the only thing Magnus can really hope for is some type of drawn opposite color bishops ending, or perhaps going to some kind of drawn rook ending. So basically he's fighting for a draw at this point. Wesley continues to take more control of the board, and he just gains more and more space. So he's slowly marching on Carlsen's position. And Carlsen is just reduced to passivity here. a5, trying to desperately get active. So now Wesley has taken over, a large portion of the board. And Magnus Carlsen's only hope here is to somehow try to play what we call behind the pawns. So to try to expose the advanced nature of these pawns, and perhaps somehow expose the squares that have been left behind. So if he could somehow, say, for instance, open the A file and get his, pieces into play, this rook on the A file, perhaps this queen on the H1 to A8 diagonal, combined with the bishop, perhaps he can muster up some type of an attack here. But Wesley does a good job. He keeps the position closed. He doesn't allow the A file to be open. Simply jettisons this pawn. Queen takes b5, and in turn he activates his own pieces. Queen c6, rook b6, queen to c8. Again, notice the passive nature of black's pieces. Queen d5, a4, and at this point this pawn just gets taken. If he tries to protect it with say rook a7, then Again, just continuing to build up the pressure in the position with a move like Queen F7. So Magnus decides to push here, and so here we can pretty much say that he's busted. Pawn advances to c6, and that's all Magnus Carlsen wrote. So extremely clean game by GM Wesley. So Magnus made probably his biggest mistake earlier in the game when he gave up the pawn on e5 and then played queen to b5 afterward. I think he overlooked White's resources here, and this is the position where I'm talking about, where he plays queen d5 here. And again, White was already better with his space advantage, but probably bishop g5, at least helping to connect these rooks, is a little better in this position here. But after queen to b5, the tactics didn't work out, and Wesley So was just able to snatch a pawn for free, as this pawn couldn't really be taken due to the move bishop d6, right, with the threat of a skewer here and the threat against this pawn. So after that, Carlsen's game went rapidly downhill. So that will do it all for round 6. That was the only decisive game, and even though Carlsen lost today, there's a rest day on Monday, and he's still in the lead. So we're sure he'll bounce back with the white pieces. And again, like I said, check out my video on Grandmasters versus the Slav exchange. You will learn a lot about the Slav. It's very, very dangerous variation, as you can see at the top level. Exactly what the pitfalls can be in this particular game. And again, please like, subscribe, all that stuff, and check my links below for books and DVDs. Okay, so I'll see you guys on the next video.